I was scrambling to try to figure out what the heck am I going to do in my life.
Did you have anyone particular in that, in those years that kind of influenced you heavily?
My mom, number one, her willingness to have a happy smile, all the time and
Mm.
joke and laugh when, she's going through some serious stuff. Imagine that you don't have any type of anything set up for you after you leave college, whereas you just had an entire job, dream job. But, I said, let me put my trust in Allah. I know that if I leave this for him, he's going to, help me out on the other end. Spending 17 years there, can't tell you how many umras I've been blessed to make. Mashallah, I was able to make Hajj.
Alhamdulillah.
It was just a beautiful experience, to be in the place that, Islam started.
So how long have you known him now?
I'm not like a sort of a groupie fan type, person.
Yeah.
So I didn't, we exchanged numbers, but I never really hit him up. Gave him a sample chapter of what, I would envision the book to be like. And he read it and he was blown away. In 1987, his mama got shot. Or, in 1996, Tupac was killed. You don't do any justice, to those events, so you really have to sort of build it up and, build up the characters, so that you as a reader can really, when that moment comes, you really feel it.
Life is one big road with a lot of signs and more signs. You gotta make up your mind to face reality all the time. No.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Journey's podcast. Today I'm joined by our brother Sulaiman Jenkins. Mashallah, tabarakallah, the brother, he has had a lengthy career in kind of a few different industries, as well as doing a lot of writing work as well and having his published book out, Life is Raw. So Sulaiman, why don't you just fill in the listeners in the beginning and just let us know a bit about what you do and have been doing for the last few years.
Yeah, alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. A pleasure to be on the podcast, and thanks for inviting me. I'm Sulaiman Jenkins, originally from Brooklyn, New York. I wanted to, when I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer and sort of a banker and things like that. And this was kind of before I returned to religion. But once I returned to the religion, I kind of had a sort of a epiphany in life and, wanted to travel to Saudi Arabia. So that brought me to English language teaching, which I've done primarily for the past, 20 years, 23 years. So I've been an English teacher primarily, but I've also, and I worked primarily in Saudi Arabia at different levels, all the way from first grade, but mostly at the university level. But I've also always tried to assume leadership positions and positions of responsibility. So that see me be, sort of coordinator, supervisor, things like that. So that's kind of the direction my life has taken me in terms of my career, where I'm going to, sort of assume educational leadership positions. So that lands me now where I'm a director of academic programs at the Institute of Nanobiotechnology at Johns Hopkins. So, which has
Amazing.
totally, absolutely nothing to do with English,
Yeah.
but still in education and academics. So so that's where I'm at now.
Mashallah, tabarakallah. Amazing, brother. And what we like to do at Journeys, we like to, try and take the listeners on a bit of a journey
Sure.
throughout the podcast. So if we could just take you back to your childhood, Sulaiman,
Sure.
could you tell us a bit about your upbringing and where you grew up?
Yeah, so grew up in Brooklyn. Father wasn't around. Mom, did her best to take care of me. We weren't, definitely not rich. Grew up sort of struggling a little bit, but was very fortunate, by Allah's grace to, have some academic talent. So that really has charted the course for me since I've been smaller. I went to some gifted schools in junior high school. Did some programs, a program called Prep for Prep, which brought me to a boarding school in Delaware called St. Andrews. That was one of the top boarding schools in America at the time. I got a full ride. It's about $80,000. I didn't have to pay a dime. And then that just set me up for success, for the rest of my life in terms of, I was able to go to Amherst College after that and NYU. A fundamental part of my upbringing has been always sort of education, My mom always bought me books to read. I love to read in general. Always love to learn things, and so yeah, that's really the foundation of how I am and what makes me up. But also, growing up, I also love to play basketball. So that was fun, learning how to play basketball. I ended up learning at a later age, but being in New York City, it's like it's a very popular place to play basketball, so you can learn
Yeah.
really quickly.
So was it mainly like kind of street ball and stuff in New York? I
Yeah,
mean, as a Brit, that's the kind of thing we see in the
yeah,
movies, you know.
yeah, definitely street ball. I still remember a lot of sort of famous guys that I used to play with. And yes, I mean it's a different type of basketball. But when I went to high school and college, that's when I learned like
Mm,
sort of organized basketball, and then I was able to put the two together, and that's what you see in the NBA. You see a lot of guys who have like street ball
mm.
talent, but they have like organized, fundamental understanding of the game, and that's what makes them really take off. So yeah, so what else? I have one brother. Um, um,
And so, you know, it's interesting sometimes, you know, especially within the teenage years in life. I think, you know, people are often shaped by the things that they do in their teenage years and influential people. Did you have anyone particular in that, you know, in those years that kind of influenced you heavily?
Definitely. My mom, number one, just
Mm,
because, she raised me and my brother, alone, and I saw her struggle. She
yeah,
also, when I was around 8 years old, got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which is sort of a debilitating nervous disease. And so,
yeah.
her health slowly deteriorated, over time. And so I really became like the breadwinner, of the
Mm,
of the family. So that was really, just her resilience and perseverance, and just, her willingness to have a happy smile, all the time, and
mm,
joke and laugh when, she's going through some serious stuff. That was always definitely influential in terms of my character, and just, basically, if she can go through that, I have nothing to complain about. So I've been through some rough times, but just pivoting off of that, it's just like you realize that she's very very strong. Oh,
mm.
so that's one person. The other person is actually Michael Jordan. Believe it or
Okay.
not, just because he really teaches you to really be the best that you can be, and
Mm,
to just not, just to do everything you can to prepare and to outwork everybody and everybody for the love of success. And so I really applied that, not only in basketball, also in life in general, just really be your best. A lot of times you hear people say, oh, I wish I was this, or I wish I was that, or, and it's like, you really can't look to what other people have, because everybody's been created differently. We all have different talents and
mm,
abilities. But the one thing you should do is just be the best version of yourself that you can be and push yourself, So that's really been something that stuck with me, really throughout my entire life. And that's something I really apply. I guess when we get to conversations of Islam, I can obviously talk about, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as being,
yeah,
on top of all of that, being the most influential person in terms of just how I, live life and, try to emulate.
yeah.
But funny enough, I was born Muslim, but I didn't grow up Muslim,
Okay.
because we stopped practicing. Yeah. So I led a regular lifestyle pretty much until
So,
around
you know,
20.
born Muslim, but grew up the kind of American Western lifestyle that most, you know, Americans or even some Brits to some extent, you
Yep.
know, live. And then at what age was it that you started turning to religion and, you know, that significant event? When did that kind of happen?
Yeah, so funny enough, it was actually my between my junior year and senior year in college. So right before my senior year, that's when and during that summer, I made that decision.
Mm,
A lot of things happen. Number one, just being in college. I'm sure it's the same in the UK. College is just a crazy scene.
mm,
And not having any sort of moral um, grounding, you sort of just do whatever. And so I did whatever for quite a few years. But obviously, none of this, everything that we're forbidden from in Islam is for a reason, right? So, in doing those things, you just don't feel good, spiritually, mentally, physically. So it just came to a point in life where I was just like, look, I have to make a huge change in my life. Otherwise, I feel like, even though academically, professionally, I was fine, I just felt like from a personal standpoint, it would have led to destruction. So, yeah, it was in the summer of my senior year, I made the, decision. It was the summer right after 9/11. So it was very interesting time to return to religion. I grappled with the idea of wearing a beard, and being visibly Muslim during this time. And I said, you know what, I don't really care. I have to do what's good for me. And so that's what
Was
that's what happened.
was there an aspect of like 9/11 that kind of made you more aware of being a Muslim, or the Muslim kind of identity within America, or wasn't it
Yeah,
that?
not really. Like I said, I mean, I always, my name is Sulaiman from birth, so
Mm,
I've always identified as a Muslim. And never, in high school, I went to a Christian school. We had to attend church every Wednesday and Sunday, but I never identified with Christianity. Um, but yeah, it was just, I mean, the 9/11 thing. I mean, I have my suspicions anyway. I couldn't believe that such a peaceful religion would commit such a horrific thing. So I had my doubts about it, but it wasn't anything that really was like, oh, okay, I want to be Muslim, now. But it did happen a year later.
okay, and so later on in your career, obviously you've had a successful career throughout your life. You've been doing different things in terms of your career. Is there anyone who at the beginning when you were starting out who had some kind of impact on your life, or you know maybe you can discuss even a moment instead of a person that may have impacted you at the beginning of your career?
You mean in terms of success, being successful?
Yeah, yeah.
There's really not there's really no one person. But again, when I went to St. Andrews, which is the high school that I told you about,
Yeah.
that was really the eye-opening sort of moment, that led me to believe that, look, if you continue doing what you're doing, you really have a huge shot at success. Now you have to understand that
Mm.
I'm not sure if you've seen the movie Dead Poet Society
No, I haven't seen
with
it.
Robin Williams. Yeah, it's a old school movie, but it was actually filmed on the campus of St. Andrews. It's an old boarding school, like dating back to the 1800s, I think.
Mm.
And just to see, it's a very affluent, boarding school, but here I am coming from Brooklyn, really nothing. And just to be in the class with these students, other students who are, I mean, they're super wealthy. Like, for instance,
Mm.
Forbes, his daughter went to our school. We had quite a few like princes and, from other countries and things like that. But just to see the level of success that they had in terms of, I would go to their houses and see how big they were and the cars they're driving and
Mm.
things like that. So, typically for African American and male, they see their way out of, sort of poverty through either, entertainment or playing sports. Very
Mm.
few see, academics as a vehicle, and so getting exposed to that at a young age, it was really, like I said, eye-opening and motivating. Like, if I really apply myself, I can be just like this, with
Mm.
these students, and then my kids can hopefully be the same. So I'd say is, yeah, just going to boarding school that really opened my eyes up to success and, charted the way.
And so, like you said, you were in college and you were kind of, trying to search, I think, for, some kind of moral compass, as it were.
Yeah.
And what was the thing that really like drew you to Islam? Was there a particular moment, like some brothers who convert, or even start practicing? There might be a particular significant event that really made them have that wake up call. Was there something like that for yourself?
Well, yeah, like in general, like that, like I said, the first 3 years of college was just crazy, just in terms of just
Mm.
partying and doing all the things I shouldn't have been doing. So again, like I said, physically and mentally and spiritually, it was just destructive, right?
Mm.
Um, but there was no way out of it, right? And so the thing is that basketball had historically been my place of escape.
Mm.
Um, but unfortunately, in college, even though I was very good coming out of high school, I had a bad situation in college where I basically chose the wrong uh, coach, and he didn't play me at all, and he really screwed up my basketball career. So I wasn't able to use that as an outlet, and those things really, I mean, it's really difficult to deal with. When you just don't have any way out, and you don't really feel like
Mm.
there's any hope. And so during that summer, like I said, after my junior year, I had an internship at Deutsche Bank, which is a pretty prominent bank. I'm sure you've heard of it there in the UK.
Yeah.
Pretty huge bank in Germany, and it went very well. but I had to work like 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week. I was making great money, made like 10 grand in like 2 months.
Mm,
So it was great money, but I had to work like 70 hours a week, and so, and then again, still, yeah, there's a lot of pressure to party and this other stuff. So, basically
mm,
I think it was a Saturday morning, I had to be at work, and, I would much rather prefer being at home with my, or in the park with, playing with my friends, during the summertime. But here I'm at work, and it was just like, this is a crossroads. Like, if you accept this job, then you're looking at, this is what your life is going to be like for the next 5, 10 years. Is this something that you really want to do? And is partying and all sorts of system, senior year is supposed to be like the crazy year where you really go, bananas. And I'm like, do I
mm,
really want to do that? And then I said to myself, it's like I having an internal conversation with myself, and I was like, no, I don't really want to. But then it was like, I mean, wallahi, I think it's almost like an angel man, just whispered, why don't you practice Islam? And then I talked to myself. I'm like, practice Islam? I'm not. I still got some years to chill.
mm,
Um, and then when I heard myself say that, I was like, wait a minute. Tomorrow's not promised. You
mm,
know, you could die today, and if you met Allah in this condition, what would your ending be? And I was like, okay. And the reason why that thought came in was because my roommate from high school, roommate of 4 years, he actually passed away the
mm,
year after we all graduated. So that was a real home hitter. Like, life is really not promised.
mm,
So yeah, I just had that internal conversation with myself, like, what's stopping me from practicing the religion? It's a way out of the, sort of dark place I was in. And then I just made the resolve, man. I just, that Saturday morning, I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And I did it. Came back
mashallah.
senior year, everybody was absolutely shocked because I was known as a party animal, and so when I came
Mm,
back with a beard and not going to parties, everybody was like, well, you know what, senior year, like, what happened to you? And
yeah.
I'm like, "No, look, I'm taking a different direction." There were a lot of people that supported me. A lot of people were kind of, weird and, whatever, but, I made the best decision for myself. And that was in 2002. So I've been back to religion 21 years. I haven't looked back.
Mashallah. And in that senior year, I don't really know what it's like, for the Muslim experience, for example, in the US in university, but alhamdulillah, I managed to before kind of when I was first a Muslim. I managed to experience some of the kind of Islamic societies within different universities in the UK just from going to different like Ramadan open iftars and things like this. And then actually later on, when I was doing my masters in the UK, I was at Portsmouth University, and it was a really nice, obviously with foreign students like Saudis and Kuwaitis, Qataris, Khalijis, and different types of foreign students. But even as well, we had guys who are Pakistani or from the UK and Muslim, and there was a really nice vibe within the kind of Islamic societies, of Muslims trying to stick to each other and help each other and support each other. So, I mean, maybe you could touch on that. Is there a similar kind of thing going on in the US, or is it different per each university, or how does that work over there?
Yeah, so I mean, there definitely were Muslim societies and Muslim organizations. The thing is, where I went to Amherst College is like a very small school,
Mm,
and probably in the entire, like, maybe what, 2,000 or 3,000 students, I can't remember. And maybe in the entire college, there's maybe like 10 Muslims. So um, yeah, when I returned, there really wasn't that huge support network, in terms of being able to branch out and sort of connect with people. But that was, I mean, for myself personally, just looking back, I think it was in my best interest, because it just, that whole year I just spent
mm,
just really getting myself back together, really focusing on just worshiping Allah and getting close to Allah. And I think that was really pivotal because at the end of
mashallah.
the day, your relationship is to God. And
Mm,
regardless of how many people you're around, you came in this world alone, you're gonna go back alone. So it was very important for me to sort of stick true to my intention and just try
mm,
to worship Allah the best way I can. I mean, when I graduated and I came back to Brooklyn, then yeah, I went, there's quite a few masajid
mm,
around, and I started going around the masajid and meeting the brothers and things like that. But yeah, when I first came back, in college, it was pretty much a solo tip, which is fine. I prefer
yeah.
that in a lot of cases anyway. Um, but yeah, at bigger universities, like the University of Massachusetts, or like University of Michigan, where they have tens of thousands of students, you definitely have those kinds of
Yeah.
organizations.
I'm just, it came to mind now while you're talking about that kind of, lone wolf kind of, way, right? And I had a similar, when I was first, after I embraced Islam, and I was first kind of learning, in the first 2 years when I was Muslim, there was one point when I had this job that was actually just outside of London in Pinewood Studios. So it's like, one of the big movie studios.
Okay.
And obviously there were like no Muslims at all there, right? And so I was in a situation where I was trying to find a place to pray. And, I was making dua. It was actually in the Ramadan that this happened. I was making dua, praying to Allah to find me somewhere that I could pray, because I'd looked and asked, people, and I was praying in all these weird places outside and here and there and wherever. And then, subhanAllah, on one particular day, I told them, I was going to take Friday off, and I went and prayed Jummah in the local neighborhood.
Yep.
And this guy must have seen me, who was an Egyptian brother who also worked at Pinewood Studios, and just happened to be at the workshop that was right next to where we were working. And then he said, yeah, whenever you need to pray, just come over and pray there. And it's like one of the places in the world where you'd never think there was any other Muslims there. Do you know what I mean? It's like Pinewood Studios. You wouldn't think so. And then, Allah just gave me this guy who said, yeah, go and come and pray. Is there any situations that you found, especially as, a young man growing up in the States, sometimes these situations happen, any particular moment or dua that you made that, subhanAllah, was just answered in a similar manner?
That's a great question. Yeah, I can't think of any, I can't think of any specific moments like, early on. I definitely have had moments, recently.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, why don't you give us one of those instead?
Well, I mean, the circumstances surrounding me having to leave Saudi Arabia, I'm not going to get into details of it, but it was very, very unexpected, surprising, kind of flipped, life upside down for me, my family and things like that. And so, in my opinion, it was definitely, I was definitely wronged, in those ways. But yeah, basically, and I'm the type of person where, I really pride myself on striving for excellence, in everything that I do. I want my name to be synonymous with, excellence, and someone who really, applies themselves and really tries to be the best version of themselves. So, when that all went down and I came back to America, basically I started from scratch again. And it was really, like I said, it was really tough and a real big test of Iman, because again, you feel like you are in control of things, and at the end of the day, you're not, but at the same time too, God doesn't, it's not like he doesn't see what's going on, so, to leave Saudi, and then, to get this job at, Johns Hopkins, which is, one of the top universities in the world, and then also get a higher position than I had in Saudi, that was a moment where I was just like, wow, like, subhanAllah, you can't ever, deny, that God is looking out for you, and that, things will be better, in the Usri Yusra. So, the ease will come after the hardship, and so, and that was based on a lot of dua, during a difficult time. So, yeah.
And I guess sometimes, you might want a certain thing, and you might think that thing is better for you, but at the end of the day, Allah knows what is best for you.
Exactly.
And that's why, often, sometimes we think we know what's best for ourselves, but actually we're often better off just asking Allah for what's khair for us. Absolutely. Because, then he'll give us something that's khair for us. And, Absolutely. Obviously with the divine wisdom, it's going to be khair, rather than us thinking, I want this, Absolutely. Making dua for that. You might get that, and it might be an issue for that. So if we just retrace, Sulaiman, a little bit, just, you started practicing, you graduated from college, And like you said in the beginning, you said you had some kind of epiphany or, realization, and that is what led you to Saudi Arabia. So could you just run us through exactly what happened there?
Yeah. So the epiphany was, like I said, at Deutsche Bank.
Hmm.
During that day. Um, it was on a Saturday. But the thing is you have to understand, I had at that point, because I had grown the way I grew up, not really being financially, empowered and things like that. I had built my whole life up to get to that point. It's like you get to the mountaintop, and Deutsche Bank was the mountaintop. Like I already, so I did the internship. I received an offer before my senior year. So you have to understand, I was already guaranteed a job, after college, and haven't even started my senior
Mm.
year. It was paying about $70,000, which at that time, for a 20
Yeah.
year old coming out of college is, and working on basically on Wall Street, that was tremendous. Um, but, like I said, it was just empty. And I knew that if I was to return to the religion, I could not, be, practicing Islam the way I would like. There's no way I could wear a beard.
Mm.
The other things that I have to do that, just be that are not in, not in agreement with, Islam.
Mm.
So after I returned to religion, so I accepted the offer in July when we finished. I accepted the religion then, and I was, just sort of getting back on my feet and learning things. And the more I learned, the more I was like, oh wow, like I really don't think I can do this job. So in November of that year, I told them, I'm sorry, I have to decline after having accepted. So now imagine that you don't have any type of anything set up for you after you leave college, whereas you just had an entire job, dream job. Um, so I was really in a situation trying to figure out my life, after college. But I said, let me put my trust in Allah. I know that if I leave this for him, he's gonna, help me out on the other end. So I was scrambling to try to figure out what the heck am I gonna do with my life. And then I said, well, education is something that's, I'm pretty good at and something I'm pretty passionate about. So I thought about teaching English. And then my first instinct was to go to Saudi Arabia. Number one, obviously Mecca Medina's there. But also they were paying very well in terms of English language teaching. So I was talking to brothers and mentioned to one brother who had a lot of experience over there. I want to go to Saudi Arabia and teach English. He's like, "Do you have your master's?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Dude, get your master's." I'm like, "Dude, are you serious? Like another year of school? I'm just finished. I'm just graduating this year." He's like, "Dude, if you're really serious about it, go back to school, get your master's degree, and you'll have longevity over there." So that's what I did. I applied to NYU, their TESOL program, got in, spent that year after graduation, and then yeah, everything was all set up to go over to Saudi. Got my first job at a boys' school in Dammam, and then bounced around from Dammam to Riyadh, stayed in Riyadh, working at a few universities, and then came back east to KFUPM. Yeah, so that's what and spending 17 years there. Can't tell you how many umras I've been blessed to make. Mashallah, I was able to make Hajj.
Alhamdulillah.
It was just a beautiful experience. To be in the place that Islam started.
MashaAllah. And along that way as well, you started to write academically as well.
Yeah.
What was the spark that kind of started you in that direction?
Yeah. So again, I've always had a passion, just for intellectual conversations.
Mm.
The schools that I went to, I'm very fortunate. They prepare you with the sort of academic tools to write. They're actually preparing people to be scholars, in terms of writing legally,
Yeah.
academically, whatever. So I had those tools. And then when I graduated NYU and I started to get involved in English language teaching, I found that there were a lot of different things that, I was interested in terms of, just how things were going on in terms of English language teaching and different cultures
Mm.
and things like that. So
Yeah.
actually just I read a few magazines, ended up writing for one magazine back in 2005. That was my first article ever published. And then I started to want to dig a little deeper with the academic stuff, and I started writing like full-fledged like academic articles and figuring out how to write, on that level. And one of the main reasons to do that was really because, if I feel like if you have something that you feel is valuable to say to people, writing about is the easiest way to do it. And I was very fortunate to have some early success, and I just built confidence. And yeah, I just continue to write, man, because I love writing. It sort of replaced basketball as being that
Yeah.
that escape.
Yeah. And what kind of advice would you give to, anyone who wants to kind of like get into writing or start writing, whether it's academically or just in general? What would be, your kind of advice to, especially young Muslims who maybe want to get into that field?
Yeah. One of the things is, I mean, number one, you have to have a passion for it. So, you have to, just love to write. Um, Definitely, there's some certain, foundational, fundamental things you need to really know, in terms of like obviously grammar, and the structure of writing. So whatever it is that you're trying to write, make sure you see like the top notch versions of whatever it is that you're, trying to write in terms of like the leading academic journals
Mm.
or, leading novelists or biographies or whatever it is, so that you can see what their style is and what's successful. And then at the end of the day, you have to practice, man. You have to, there's
Yeah.
no greater teacher than just practice, 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 practice. Don't be afraid to, fail, you know, um, you just have to keep writing.
Yeah.
There have been a number of times, like for instance, I've been very fortunate to publish a number of articles for Oxford University Press. um, I've published, I think, four or five. I can't remember, but the amount that I've submitted has been about, I think, 20 or 25.
Mm.
So I've only been accepted 5 times, out of 20. But those times that I got the rejection letters didn't never deterred me. It was like, I
Yeah.
have to keep, just keep plugging away. So yeah, so I think those are certain things that you need to do. If anybody wants any specific advice, they can reach out to me, and I'd
Yeah.
be like to help, in whatever way I
Excellent,
can.
excellent. Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll put some links to your socials, in the description, and it's always a nice thing. I think, especially like I had a brother, Russian Adam, who's a perfume maker,
Yeah,
on the podcast, and he was saying a similar thing. A lot of his success was down to other people kind of supporting him in different areas, and he was
yeah,
saying, if people have questions that he can assist with, or he was keen to mention, like, don't just ask me like, what's where do you buy all your products from, give me the numbers for these kind of questions, which
right, right,
are a bit
right.
much. But obviously, everyone who has an expertise or whatever, to some extent can lend some valuable advice to people starting out in that
Absolutely,
career.
absolutely.
And is there any moment, I mean, aside from, because we're going to talk about the book a little bit, but is there
Sure.
anything along that kind of writing career that was like a significant success that really assisted in that, or helped you with a bit of extra motivation? Anything at all that was like, you were like, wow, that you didn't really expect it, but it was like an amazing success?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, getting published in Oxford University Journal was the first one was in 2010, and
Mashallah.
that for me was like that was it.
Yeah, yeah,
Felt like I had some decent writing skills, but having that sort of stamp of approval from a place like Oxford University Press,
yeah.
their acceptance rate is like 10%. So
Mm,
out of 3,000 articles, they're only going to publish 300. So your chances are very, very small. And like I said, I was rejected a few times, but getting that first time, that showed me that it could be done. And so after that, I just kept
yeah.
trying and trying and trying, and then a few years later, I've got four or five. And so that was really sort of the um,
The
uh,
pinnacle.
yeah, the pinnacle, just the establishment that I do have something that's valuable, as long
Yeah.
as it's written in the way that they that's acceptable to them. I have a voice, and it also adds obviously credibility to you as a writer as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important point in terms of, there might be people out there who are are writing a lot, and they might be an excellent writer, but they've never really shown anyone else their work, or they've never really, displayed the work. So it's like the peer review element and these kind of things, give it a whirl. Why not send your articles or some of your writing to someone in the field that you're writing in, that is, talent that you look up to, or is someone who is renowned in the field, and you never know, you may have something there that, if you didn't and you just kept it to yourself, you'd never know.
Exactly. And bouncing off of that too, just real quick. I mean, that's the thing too, is that, I had read a few articles in, these Oxford journals, and, as a person, you don't know unless you try, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're reading it and you love it and you like what you're reading, why, if you feel like you have something to say, why not just apply yourself? Like, had I not even thought about applying myself, I would have never found out that I could, right? So an important part in life is just, never shortchange yourself, never think less of yourself. You have to, you don't know what you're capable of unless you try it.
Yeah, and I think that's a theme that we often hear, like over the past few podcasts we've been doing, is that a lot of the time, especially in the social media generation that we live in, like everyone's really keen to post their successes and show you like, oh, I did this, which can at times make someone feel like, oh, I'm never going to be able to achieve that. Look at how these guys, how well they've done. But that might be, 10% of their work, or that might be 5% of their work, and they're only displaying, in the public realm, the success. And kind of just on that point, not to highlight any of your deficiencies or anything like that, but just in general in life, sometimes we have obstacles or failures or things like that. And maybe it's not by your own deficiency, it could be the situation that you're in. Have you got any kind of memorable failures or things that, you thought were going to do well and they just kind of fell flat on their face? And how did you deal with that? Or how did you turn it around, or what did you do?
So I've got two. One is sort of basketball related, and then the other one is actually, like I said, what I just went through in Saudi Arabia. But in terms of basketball, in my sophomore year, before my sophomore year, I was really, like, I had just started playing like a few years ago, and I was really improving. But in sophomore year, just before the basketball season, I actually tore my MCL, my medial collateral ligament, playing football, which really derailed me. Before that, I was like dunking easily. I was really super athletic. But that really, really set me back. Allah only knows, he's the best of planners. But Allah only knows where I would have been, athletically, had that not happened. So that was a real, not necessarily, I wouldn't consider it a failure, but it was definitely a setback. But through it, even though, I was set back, I really worked extremely hard and before the season began, to get myself back into playing shape. I played the whole sophomore year in the brace. But I worked really hard. And again, going back to that Michael Jordan sort of apply yourself, I was sort of an average player freshman year, but I worked so hard. By my senior year, I ended up scoring 1,000 points for my school and being the second leading scorer in the whole state of Delaware, which I was playing. And so to get to that point after having torn my MCL sophomore year, I mean, I was, it was like you wouldn't even have known. That was one thing, basketball related. And then the second one that didn't have a happy ending was, again, just playing at, school and in college, and not getting any playing time or any recognition from the coach. Yet all my teammates were like, dude, like, why are you not playing? This doesn't make any sense. You're in practice killing it. It doesn't make any sense. So that was a failure in terms of, and it was partially my fault too, because I chose the wrong school. There were a lot of other schools who really wanted me. He didn't really express that beforehand, so really it's on me for that to happen like it did. But just in life, you just learn that sometimes things will not go your way. You have dreams and hopes and things like that, and they may not materialize the way you want. Don't cry over spilled milk. Just try to channel that energy into something positive. And then, yeah, what happened in Saudi, it wasn't a failure on my part. Definitely external things. But again, it just builds your resilience. There's a saying that says, whatever doesn't kill you, make you stronger.
Yeah.
And it just builds you to, like, yeah, okay, that happened. I came back to America. I started from ground zero, but a year later, you know, I have everything that I had back in Saudi and then some. The only missing thing is that I don't have Mecca and Medina. So that was a very valuable lesson to learn. Just stick with it. Just try to be mentally tough. And get through it, and always hope for the best.
Yeah, mashallah. No, definitely, like you said, resilience is one of those characteristics that's just, helps people to get towards a success. I mean, it's like that famous, what is it? That it's not Rocky, is it? Is that Stallone quote of like life's, it's not how hard you can hit, it's how many hits you can take basically and keep going. Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
excellent. And then, obviously as you progressed through your writing career,
Mhm.
one of the things that, you're quite well known for now, mashallah, is authoring the autobiography of our brother Napoleon Mutah Beale.
Mhm.
It's the title Life is Raw.
Mhm.
And what was the kind of inspiration when you were writing that book, and the experience of writing? What was it like for yourself?
Yeah, so that's a that's a really interesting dynamic how that happened. Um, I've mentioned before in a few interviews, growing up, I always loved Tupac, even though you have to understand that there was a big beef between the East Coast rappers and West Coast rappers at the time.
Yeah.
Me being from Brooklyn, I'm not supposed to like Tupac because he's West Coast. But yeah, I didn't care about that. He was a very impactful person, especially as a black man.
Mm,
Um, he just made you feel good to be black and proud, and so I always loved listening to Tupac. And when the Outlaws came out, I always loved listening to the Outlaws because they were extension of him. But my favorite one was Mutah, and I always tell him
okay.
this hilarious. He's my favorite one. I just thought that the way, lyrically, the way he wrote was really creative. And
Mm,
me being a writer, I could appreciate that. Sometimes
mm,
people rap and the rap is just garbage. They're not really saying anything.
yeah.
But really prominent ones are ones that have messages, and they also, can play on words. So fast forward, to 2008. He and I meet through a mutual friend. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I'm really sitting in front of Napoleon.
So how
Um,
long have you known him now?
since 2008. Yeah, so we met
2008.
through,
Okay.
yeah, 2008. We met through a mutual friend, and I'm not like a sort of a groupie fan type
Yeah.
person. So I didn't, we exchanged numbers, but I never really hit him up like that. Even though
Yeah.
I was really, like I said, really a big fan back in the days.
Mm,
Fast forward to like 2000, and over the years we just gave salams here and there. I was living in. I was living in. We were living in Riyadh, but I guess we never crossed sort of paths. Um, Fast forward 2015, we kind of just linked back up. I was changing jobs and things like that. So I had a little bit of extra money, in my pocket. We got to talking. He had just launched his clothing brand. So I said, oh, that's pretty interesting. I got some money I'm trying to invest. So I ended up investing in his clothing brand, which is 33. And then, we just sort of, became closer, over time. I think he really appreciated the fact that even though I had his number, I wasn't blowing him up, like a fan or
yeah.
whatever. I was treating him like a brother. And then we just got, closer and closer over time, just because we have sort of similar approaches in life and mentalities. He's kind of he's very social, but at the end of the day, he likes to keep to himself. Very
Mm,
similar, So um, as we started sort of having to make more frequent contact because of the business,
mm,
um, he also had just released his documentary,
yeah.
and the documentary was, about his, his life and things like that. And I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty well done. And then, some people in the comments wrote, well, we're just waiting for your book. And
Mm,
then I told them, and I read that, and the light bulb went off, and I'm like, hey, are you interested in writing a book? I'm an author. I mean, not an author. I'm a if you write in articles, you're not considered an author yet. until you write your first book. So yeah, I'm a writer. I published Oxford, this and this and that. And he was like, okay, cool. So he didn't really, he wasn't really super interested just because he
Yeah.
had a really bad experience with the first book that was written for him.
Mm.
And it wasn't the greatest quality. I'll just put it at that.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't really, that enthusiastic, I'll say.
Yeah.
But then I, gave him a sample chapter of what, I would envision the book to be like. And he read it and he was blown away. And so, um, that was the beginning of the book, and we spent a lot of time just talking about a lot of intimate things that happened in his life,
Mm.
talking about the themes that we want to come out in the book. So writing a biography was a very rewarding experience. Um, More so because it was a project that we were able to have his distinct voice and my distinct voice. So it's very
Yeah.
clear, who's talking in the book.
Mm.
But it was merged seamlessly. And like I said, I think he's got an amazing story. Very impactful, very enlightening, and we wrote it in a way so that anybody could have access to it.
Mm.
Whether white, black, Muslim, non-Muslim, rich, from the hood, it didn't matter. The main thing was to communicate this human story, which was filled with tragedy, but also
Mm.
resilience, and so yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great project, and it was definitely fun.
And so, in terms of, just for those who haven't read the book and might be interested, in terms of like the writing style or the style of authorship, because I haven't read it myself, I've got to be honest, but
Oh, okay.
very interested, in reading it.
Yeah.
I've seen the documentary. I was in a screening of the documentary actually. Just when I became Muslim, I was in a
Hmm.
screening in London that actually Mutah, he actually came there himself, and so he was
Okay.
there. And it's funny because I was actually involved in the music industry before, and it was a point in my
Yeah.
life when I was just exiting basically out of the music industry, but I was having these kind of doubts and
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
And I remember there was a Q&A afterwards, and I kind of put
Hmm.
my hand up, and I think I asked a question like along the lines of, yeah, but the music that I have or that I make has got a good message in it. So that's fine, isn't it? Because it's got a good message. And he
Right.
was
Right.
like, no, he basically explained, in the Q&A that it's not the lyrics or what you're saying that is necessarily the thing that makes it halal or haram. It's the
Right.
instruments itself. And I was like, okay, because he was someone that we saw as someone serious, just becoming Muslim from the music industry, etc. So,
Yeah.
definitely an amazing story. And like you said, but yeah, like I was saying, just from what I understand, that the style, it's a bit different to your kind of normal autobiography, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, in terms of, writing a biography, you know, um, you're talking about the life of somebody, right? So, but it has to be in a way that's interesting. I read prolifically,
Mm.
I read a lot. So I want to read something that I'm interested in. If it doesn't get me within the first 3 or 4 pages, like I'm putting it down, right? So
Mm.
you have to write it in a way that's interesting, but at the same time, it's also factual, right? So you can't like make up stuff. And then, me being just an academic guy, there's no way that I can write a book of that length without putting my academic sort of, um, uh,
Flavor on it.
sprinkling that, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, sprinkling my flavor on it. So that's how I approached it, man. I approached it from, this is the book about, somebody's life. I wanted it to have an academic lens, um, so that it could actually be used in college. It could be taught in college, and professors in college appreciate something that's heavily referenced. So
Yeah.
the book has about there's like 150 different sources that I pulled from in terms of
Mm.
books, interviews. I really made it like really, really academically sound. But at the same time too, I was able to go back into like my high school days of like just being a creative writer, and
Mm.
using certain imagery and colorful language and things like that, again, to make it an interesting story to read.
Yeah.
And then there are also some pivotal moments in the book where you can't really just write. For instance, when his grandmother died, you can't just write in 1990 whatever his grandmother died, or in
Yeah.
1987 his mama got shot, or in 1996 Tupac was killed. You can't just, I
Mm.
mean, that you don't do any justice to those events, so you really have to sort of build it up, and build up the characters, so that you as a reader can really, when that moment comes, you really feel it. It's not just you read it, you really
Mm.
feel it. So um that was really rewarding, challenging. But that is never a challenge that I shy away from. And I'm just happy that we would, unanimously, we've got nothing but positive reviews. So I'm happy that it had the effect that it that was desired. And also another testament to that is that it got accepted to a museum. So now it's
Mashallah.
actually a museum. Universal Hip Hop Museum, which is also just a testament to his story and a testament to the way it was told.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's nice as well because at the end of the day, it can be a great guidance as well for Muslims, non-Muslims alike in terms of his story. Having it in such a public and world-renowned kind of museum
Yeah,
is a credit to your work and also to the brother's story.
yeah.
Have you done an audio book for it yet?
We have worked on it, and we're in the last stages of it. Again, life kind of happened, and so it really
Yeah,
sort of derailed. We had it scheduled to come out back in 2001,
yeah.
but like I said, life happened and it kind of derailed things. But we're back on it, and we're hoping to release it by the summer of this year. It's like
Okay,
90
excellent.
90
Yeah.
percent done. We just have
So
to
you,
do.
you are you doing your voice and
Yep,
Napoleon's doing his?
yep. So
Fantastic.
just
That's
like
how
the
I
book.
imagined it. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Just like the
Dope.
book, I'm the narrator of the
Mm, mm.
story. He's saying his parts.
Mashallah. Yeah, that's perfect. And during that time, were there any kind of like you said, the audio book, it got delayed and whatever. Were there any kind of obstacles in the writing process that you overcame, or what was the most difficult thing about writing your first book?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there wasn't any, there weren't any like real obstacles. I mean,
Mashallah.
um, it was
So just
really, yeah,
Tawfiq
yeah,
and
definitely,
mashallah.
definitely. But I think
Mm,
again, like I said, because I got so much love for Mutah,
yeah,
I had a lot of love for Pac. There's a lot of other things in the book. It's not just Mutah's story, but also it was very important for me
yeah.
to put his story in context, as to what was going on in America at the time, in
Mm,
Black America, America just in general. So there's a lot of themes, mental health things. So there's a lot of other themes that I was able to throw in there. And so just being able to write about those things that I'm passionate about anyway,
yeah.
it really was a rewarding, experience. And honestly, again, I had hoped, back in the days to write a book at some point. Never
Yeah.
imagined that I've done it, sort of as soon as I did. But again, this is a clear cut example of you don't know what you're capable of until you actually do it. And
Mm,
people might think, oh, writing a book is such a long and impossible thing. It's really just a series of chapters. Once you write
yeah.
like 15 pages or 10 pages, that's a chapter. Just do that 10 times and you got a book.
Mm,
So like I said, I'm just really happy. The whole process was really rewarding and just gave me confidence to just continue writing in the future.
excellent. And life is a journey of learning and growth. Along your journey, like we've seen, it's been an amazing journey, right? You've gone from, graduating, leaving the top dream job, being an English teacher for several years in Saudi Arabia, working on your academic writing and finally writing the book and then, landing a fantastic job,
Hmm.
like you said, higher than your expectations to some extent,
Yeah.
where you're currently at.
Mhm.
What are any kind of like important lessons that you've kind of learnt along that career that you think is really important, especially people who are starting out in life, that kind of age where they're maybe trying to get their first job or deciding what they want to do in life? What would be your kind of main advice to someone in that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in general, you really have to, just, and this is from Islam, and this is why, I love Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam so much.
Sometimes.
Just strive for excellence in everything that you do,
Mm.
and that's what we're supposed to do as Muslims anyway,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean that your excellence is going to look like somebody else's excellence because it's different, right?
Mm.
But at the end of the day, do what's excellent for you, do the best that you can do. Um, always be professional in everything that you do. It takes a long time to build up a reputation, and it takes seconds to tear it down. So you really have to be, if you begin a job and you spent the entire, first year really doing your best to, just do everything that's asked of you, and going beyond that, you'll be remembered for that, and that will serve you in your career. Like if you do end up having a mistake, people will brush it off because they're like, he started so strong. This is what we know him to be. But in the opposite, if you began and you just don't take it seriously, and people think you're a joke, if you try to turn it
Mm.
up and try to do, people are gonna be like, well, I mean, the way you came in, it's going to be much more difficult to change that narrative about you. So really, whenever you have opportunities, really, really seize them and really go all out with it. Same thing with the book. With Mutah, that was a
Mm.
tremendous amount of pressure, just from the standpoint. I've never written a book. I've written articles, but never written a book, and then I've never written a biography before. And then it's also about somebody who's notable, right? So
Yeah.
if I fail in that, it's a failure for him and his story, but it's also a failure for me as an author. So um, you know, I really didn't envision that scenario at all, and that I was not willing to accept that at all. And so in order to do that, I really just applied we working on the book literally 10 hours a day, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the
Mm.
morning, sending him voice notes, because I'm just on it like that, so really,
Yeah.
apply yourself, because when you get these grand opportunities, you may never get it again. So you have to make the best of it. And then the other thing is too, is like you said, man, resilience is a part of life. As Muslims, we know Allah says, do you think you believe and you won't be tested? You're going to be tested, and it's going to come from places that you don't expect. But another boxing analogy is not whether or not you get knocked down, but it's how fast you get back up. So everybody's going to get
Yeah.
knocked down, but are you going to stay down? That's up to you. But you got to try to get up and just dust it off, and so be resilient. Never give up. Never give up. Never
Mm.
never underestimate what you're capable of doing. If you whatever you put your mind to, you can do it.
Excellent, excellent. And yeah, I think that's sometimes lost on, a lot of Muslims, whether they are, practicing Muslims, or whether they're, just starting out on their journey into Islam, or, whatever level of piety. Sometimes people forget about that aspect of trying to do your best. And,
Absolutely.
people end up just doing the bare minimum sometimes, which is,
Exactly.
unfortunate, because at the end of the day, even if you're a Muslim who was like not particularly knowledgeable when it came to the fundamentals of your religion, which, we all should be, but even if you weren't, a scholar or a sheikh, the minimum you could do is in your actions show that you're striving to be, the best in your field. And that in itself is a phenomenal da'wah. And, it's a common theme with a lot of the brothers that we've had on the podcast so far,
Yeah.
whether they're in graphic design, whether they're in, the restaurant industry, they've always kind of focused on going above and beyond and giving, the customer or the client that little bit extra to just kind of, sweep them off their feet,
Absolutely.
so to speak. So, just to conclude, we don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure you're busy. But just, can you tell us, some of the, actually, one penultimate question to the final question.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of the time I ask people what they could do in their field if they had 10x the budget that they had. So just off the top of my head now, what I wanted to ask you is, if you had a situation where we were just like, you know what, Sulaiman, we're going to pay for all your expenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
For everything you need, what would be the next kind of book that you would like to author? Would it be a certain person's autobiography? Would it be your autobiography? Would it be, any book that you could now write, and we'll pay you all the expenses, right? What do you think what do you think you would do?
Well, that's that's pretty interesting. I don't know if this is actually going to be a follow-up question at the end, in terms of projects that I'm currently working on. But those are actually two projects that I am working on. I can't let the cat out of the bag,
Okay.
but I am working on another biography of another notable, sort of celebrity. So that when that
Mashallah.
news comes out, it should be pretty, hopefully interesting and generate
Yeah.
interest and excitement. Um, and then, yeah, at some point, I am definitely, after writing everybody else's, stories, I definitely have my own in mind to do that as well. So write an autobiography about my life and just sort of putting that to paper. Um, so yeah, so those, yeah, and then also with the release of the second biography, I kind of hope that because this person is quite notable as well. I kind of hope that that puts me on the radar of other
Mm.
sort of notable people if
Yeah.
they want their story to be told in a certain
Mm.
way that they would approach me. So that's kind of the hope with this because writing having your story written in the it's a legacy, something that's going to be carry on long after you leave this earth, and something that you
Yeah.
can pass on to your children. So I just hope that I can position myself in a way to be that for other notable people.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling that I may know who it is, but I'm not. Is it a basketballer?
No, no,
Okay then.
I'll
So
just
I'm completely wrong. So that's fine. That's good that you said that because now
yeah,
people it will leave people guessing a bit. Who is it?
sure,
They
sure.
might think it's someone in the music industry, but we know that it's not a
Yeah,
basketballer. So
yeah, yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
at
That
some
narrows it
point
down.
you'll get into basketballers as well. I think
Yes,
that would
yes,
be I think that would be good,
yes,
man. I think that would
yes,
be good.
thanks. Yeah,
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, the last question that I was going to go into, but you've kind of already answered it now was what kind of projects you've got. So we're looking forward to the two books from our mystery celeb and someone else.
yeah.
And how do you kind of see your career evolving in the future? Can we just expect more of the same, or is there something that you want to go into specifically, or um,
Yeah, I mean, from a career standpoint, I probably, like I said, I really want to get into, sort of elevate higher in terms of educational leadership. Hopefully,
mm,
become a dean, of a college or university or a president. That's definitely like the end game. But in terms of writing, yeah, I mean, it just like I said, I really hope that this next project that I'm working on will position me, to be able to do that, for other notable people. And then also, there's another. Um, Again, I can't let the cat out of the bag too much, but there's
yeah,
another um, very promising project that has come out of the book for both myself and Mutah,
yeah,
which should be very exciting.
mm,
It should be very exciting. That this project came out of the book. Basically, people
yeah,
read the book, and they decided to take it a step further. So that's also a project on the front line. So again, I don't know where that kind of exposure and things will take myself and Mutah. But whatever it is, we just hope for the best and hope to do right by Muslims. Be
yeah,
a very good image and representative of Islam, of Muslims, of the Sunnah, brothers on the Sunnah and things like that.
mm,
Because at the end of the day, you are a representation of these things, and so you really have to take that seriously.
yeah.
So you
Yeah,
know,
definitely. I mean, I was discussing this with a brother the other day that, I think partly due to social media, we're seeing a lot more exposure for, brothers like yourself, brothers like Mutah, who are, upon the sunnah, trying to practice the religion as best they can and balance
sure,
that with also being, excellent in their fields as well. So, alhamdulillah, we wish you all the success in your next ventures and projects.
Jazakallah.
Sounds like we've got a lot of exciting things to come, and
Yes,
we hope that Allah blesses you and gives you tawfiq in
Ameen.
that. And it's been absolutely fantastic talking with you, having the time to,
Same here.
chat with you, despite the massive time difference as well. It's like the middle of the night
Yeah.
almost for me and the middle of the day for you.
Oh,
So
gosh.
alhamdulillah,
Yeah,
we
exactly.
managed to hook it up.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And everything, at the end of the day, all praise, and thanks is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who, without him, none of this is possible, so alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair, bro. And, hopefully we'll see where our podcast goes as well.
Yep.
Maybe, as one of our first guests, we might have to get you back on after
Absolutely.
the next books, inshallah.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, bro.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Life is one big road with a lot of signs and more signs. You gotta make up your mind to face reality all the time. No.